Hi. Today I'm so excited to introduce you to a writer who lives in Indiana. Her name is Melissa Fraterrigo. She's the executive director of the Lafayette Writers Studio in Lafayette, Indiana, and teaches at Purdue University. She is the author of Glory Days, which is a novel in linked stories, and a collection of short fiction, The Longest Pregnancy. This memoir that we're going to be talking about is her newest book, The Perils of Girlhood. It is a memoir in essays. And I'm very eager to talk with Melissa about this third book, about her range of fiction to memoir and how that all works in the linked form, and to describe to us how she came upon that structure. So let me start by telling you what the publisher has said about her book, University of Nebraska Press. Like many girls growing up in the 80s and 90s, Melissa Fraterrigo leaned on popular culture to transition from childhood to adolescence and beyond. Judy Blume told stories about girls embracing their imperfections. Madonna encouraged bold moves. But Fraterrigo's experiences with dating and attempts to refashion her body through diet and exercise left her feeling far from empowered. It wasn't until Fraterrigo became a mother to twin daughters and they began their own self-criticisms that she questioned how she might help them navigate their own girlhoods. And I have to say, I related incredibly and resonated with the issues in this book. So I'd like to start by asking you, maybe it's in this description, what triggered your writing this book?
Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you today, Sheila. And I'm so glad to hear that the book resonated with you. Yeah, which is really exciting for me to hear. I've been floored by the response of so many different kinds of people. This is not just a book about the experiences women are subjected to in this culture. This is kind of more about what it means to be human and what it means to live in a family. And I think in some ways consider the fact that our loved ones, even though sometimes they cause us pain, by and large are doing the very best that they can. And so you asked how the book came to be, and it really is kind of a love letter to my daughters.
Mm.
It was around the time of the pandemic, and my daughters were taking class on Zoom, and my own classes had shifted online as well. And I was just no longer interested in writing fiction in the way that I had been previously. And it could simply be because the world was just upside down and it was horrific enough and frightening enough to be alive at that time. But what I found myself drawn to were true stories and experiences where I had the sense that a writer was looking back on their life with a desire to further understand how they came to arrive at a particular moment in the present. So kind of a looking back, but also from the gaze of the present. And so at the same time, as I mentioned, my daughters were not yet teenagers, and I was beginning to see how they were struggling with some of the very same things that I had experienced, 30 years prior with the criticisms of their bodies, the sometimes that the issues with friends, the disdain that they might have for their own selves. And the more essays that I read, the more personal essays and memoirs that I read, where I had this sense of an author going and looking back on their life, it kind of unlocked in me, offered me this permission to look at my own life with that same sense of inquiry. And as I began that work, looking on my own life, it was in hopes that I might help my daughters navigate their own girlhood and also allow me, in some ways, to maybe find the forgiveness that I needed to offer both myself and of other loved ones.
I'm
So
really
the
glad.
book began
Can
as
I,
as
I
a
just like,
search.
I just want to interrupt to say that is so key for me as a writer and teacher and reader to know what it was and what was in it for the writer. I mean, you definitely had an audience in mind in a way, your girls, wanting them to be comfortable with themselves by exploring your own discomforts, and having survived, and grown. But to hear you say that you were looking, you realize, for a way to forgive. Maybe you didn't know that when you first started. Maybe it was something that now you realize you did. And so that's a question I have. Because we
Yeah,
do
I mean, I think it would be pretty difficult to write a good book if you were to start out with a particular intent. That
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
that really has to come out through the muscle on the page, the work that you're doing day in and day out. And so, yes, it's only in hindsight, once I have a complete manuscript, and even once that I'm having conversations like this with you, now that the book is in the world, that I'm able to actually conceptualize, well, what was I trying to do? I mean, I have probably bits and pieces, but um, I was only able to put some of that together, I think, more
That's why
recently.
I think, as a poet, I've heard from many poets that they say, the words are smarter than I am. I didn't know what I thought until I wrote it. And I think that applies to all personal writing and probably
Yes.
even to fiction, that we don't know where we're going, but we certainly allow ourselves to do it. And then we allow ourselves to listen.
Yeah.
And hence, of course, comes revision. When we know more because we've written more, we can realize what to do, how to shape things. Did you have that experience when you were writing?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I wholeheartedly believe in revision. I believe in a messy first draft and just getting something down on the page. And, when we give ourselves permission to be messy, when we give ourselves permission to not get it right or be perfect, then we kind of open up the possibility of a project or of a manuscript because we're not holding it within the confines of our hands. We're giving it a chance to kind of live and breathe and become
Right.
what it wants
Well
to.
said. And then you called it muscle on the page. It's a wonderful phrase.
Thank you.
I think that's a lot of that is happening in your book because of the abundance, the incredible detail with which you have remembered and given to us scenes, conversation, gestures, well, which is part of the scenes, of course. And I wonder, as the reader and as a writer who relies on details and is often upset because I can't remember enough of them, how did you do that? How did you get yourself in there, back there, through so
Mhm.
many decades of living to be able
Yeah.
to share it with me, the reader?
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you noticing the use of details throughout. I'm pretty adamant. I also teach writing, so I teach writing at Purdue University, but I also teach graduate creative nonfiction at Butler University. And something that I talk to my students about is the importance of kind of valuing your reader above anybody else. Obviously, in that first draft, you're just thinking about your own story. You have to kind of put the idea that anybody else is going to read your pages. You have to kind of put that out of mind. Um, and I think once you put those, the idea of additional voices or eyes out of mind, you can allow yourself to really be held by a moment. And that's where, you try and tap into your senses. Um, Senses can bring you back, can bring up a memory. It's tactile nature. It's smells. I will also say that some of this comes back to revision. Every essay in this book was written over various iterations, and so in that first blush, maybe I am only when I'm talking about the swimming pool where I swam before high school. At first blush, we're only getting the sense of smell and sight. But then when I go back to it, I can realize like, oh wait, what do I hear there? So once you've got a specific image in mind, you can really slow yourself down and bring in the other senses. Um, I talk I talk to my students about kind of the integrity of a scene. It's that scene that is going to allow your reader to not just see and experience what you are trying to convey to them, but it's also going to allow the reader to bring their own experience to the page, because then they can start to think about the swimming pools where they spent their youth or something like that. So, um, the sensory detail, the details that I've used throughout, some of it also is um, simply that's the way my brain works. If you ask me what were the top 10 dinners that we ate when I was 8 years old, I will probably be able to come up with that. But if you ask my brother and sister, they'll say, "Why are you asking that question?"
Yeah.
So
So
it's just
I'm going
simply
to
the way
ask
I
you,
work.
are you the only writer in the family? Are you the writer? And because you seem, and I think many of us as writers resonate with that, we're very concerned with particulars because they do tell a story.
They
We,
matter.
yeah, and it's a way of thinking and relating and being in the world for us. But other people don't have that.
It's
Um,
true.
they might enjoy reading it, but they would never
Right,
catalog that, you know?
right.
So that's why I'm wondering, are you the family writer?
I am. They call me the memory keeper.
Yes, good. Okay. Um, there are so many moments in these scenes where you've done the magic of us being there with you as a younger person through the years, but also gently have us knowing that you're writing this, obviously, with some ability to look back as a different person, as an older person, even before we get to the, more into the years when you're marrying and having children. But even earlier than that, you make us aware. And one of the moments that stands out for me is your dad, like my dad, had the kind of temper maybe many dads of those eras had. They did the action of pulling their belts out of their belt loops and threatening us and sometimes hurting us. And there is a scene where your dad is, your sister and you are hiding. You're up against the wall under a bed-ish, and she's under
Mhm,
the bed. And your father is trying to get something, maybe it's the belt, maybe it's more, maybe it's his arm, under there. And you say, I pulled her close to me, closer to me. At least I hope I had, or something
mhm,
like that, or I'd like to
mhm,
think I had. That's one of those moments for me where even your wonderful memory, right, of detail and observation can be clouded by desire, by who we are now and what we hope we did. But who knows? You were just as threatened then too. Who knows what we do in panic?
yeah.
And there's earlier in the book, you tell a harrowing story about a swim coach and the swimming pool that you mentioned. Um, and you're telling it though to adult women friends. So
Mhm,
it's the whole scene, which is very uh, evocative of that actual time in your life in the swimming pool, in the swim team. But we know from the start that you're telling it from a now that's different. And I really admire the way you do that, where it's a gentle reminder to the reader that our author is looking at the past, but we get really absorbed in the past, as it seems to me the writer does because of the hybrid form where things are in sections, not just that this is a collection of personal essays become a memoir, but inside the personal essays, they are hybrid. They move and they have sections. And it seems to me that as I'm reading, as you were writing, your memories are coming up from different times, present, past, and somehow and that's the magic. They work together. And so I'm wondering what you can tell us about that structure.
Okay. I feel like you're bringing up two questions. First of all, the first question was about, like under the bed and reminding the reader that, hey, my memory is fallible. And I do think that that's important to consider. And I think if you look at the beginning of any memoir, the author's going to say, hey, this is a work of of my remembered experience. Somebody else might remember it differently, and this is my experience. So if there are times where I wasn't quite sure I will use conjecture or speculation to signal to the reader, I'm not real sure about this one. I don't know what my intent was.
Mm.
I can hope it was a particular thing, but I'm not quite sure. In terms of the memoir and essay form, so what that means is, yes, this is a collection of essays, but each essay or chapter kind of has its own skin, which means that some of the essays were published individually in magazines. But yet, when you read those essays can stand alone. But when you read the book, in the order it was configured, so beginning to end, it has the same sense of a lived experience of a life, just like a memoir. And so once I had a draft of the manuscript, I was able to go through it and look to see where am I bringing up particular ideas, and where then can I have an echo of that in another draft. Something I also used a fair bit of in this book is popular culture. So I would look to see, how I might bring in the 80s and 90s as an era through
Mhm.
song, through items, through types of foods, and even movies, or characters that were on TV. All of that again, I kind of braided throughout the book to give us to give the reader a larger sense um, of this whole world, and to invite the reader to again make their own meaning of this life, of this experience. So each time as a reader, you come across something that maybe, oh, there's this reference again to, um, I'm trying to think of one of the links, but an allusion back to the swim coach,
Mhm.
or the power of friendship. You as a reader are bringing with you the knowledge that you have from that part of the book. So it just makes it a little bit more of a rich reading experience.
Absolutely. And I really, as a writer, enjoy what you said about going back to the first draft and feeling that there's more that you can say and more that you can find from the history. And the essay about your father teaching you how to use a gun um, and is wow is braided, I believe, with dads. What are dads? You know,
Mhm.
what is their function? And memories of a friend's dad committing suicide, memories of other dads, a dad losing their job. I mean, just what does that mean? And then it's told to us against the background of what we already have learned that this speaker in this book, um, wants her dad's approval so badly, wants it also because she believes she can absorb some of his anger. She can fix it by being better at stuff.
Mhm.
And that's such a relatable thing about not only being a girl, like you said, this is a book about humans and family life, that there are some of us in our families who grow up believing we've got that power and we keep trying and we keep trying and we keep trying, and it takes a really long time to realize that isn't our power. That's, we need to deal with it, but we can't take it away. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a very rich book, and I'm very happy to hear you talking about how you made that happen. Um, and it obviously takes time, although a book when it's done seems like, wow, that didn't take any time at all.
Yeah, right.
It's just the time to live it. But boy, I can write it, but that's not true, is it?
Yeah, yeah, that's for
Um,
sure.
so I have a lot of questions here, many of which you have answered. I just want to point out that the essay called The Elements of Fiction
Mhm.
seems to me like what we would call today a hybrid. I mean, I don't mean a hybrid, I mean a hermit crab essay,
Hmm. Hmm.
because you have the
Absolutely.
structure of what are the elements of fiction. And I think, help me here, but I think you say conflict and setting and characters. And then
Hmm.
in between those elements of fiction, you're using your personal story.
Yes.
So, and it's I don't know if it's right in the center of the book at this moment, but it was fascinating that I had read so much and now I'm seeing it put together in this way. And I just want you to know I really enjoyed that. Um,
Good.
so Do you write in lyric form? Your personal essays, are they always that way?
I do. And in terms of lyricism, I mean, yes, there's definitely the hermit crab as a form, but I think a lyric essay can also simply be an attention to language. And I'd like to think that
Yes.
I write with a concerted effort to pay attention to how a word sounds, how it feels in your mouth, what image it's going to create again in that reader's
Right,
mind.
right.
So,
And you said you used the word braided, and a
mhm.
lot of those essays, like the one we just talked about fathers, is a braided essay. And I think reading your book, I want to tell people watching this video, read The Perils of Girlhood if you want to know the power of the braided essay, of the hermit crab essay, of an abundance of sensory imagery that never takes us out of the story, just keeps involving us and evoking more and more, so that, as you said, we remember our own childhoods, our own young adulthoods, our own parenting. And it's very, E.B. White said something about the personal essay, like, um, people don't want to hear how perfect we are. They want to hear about our imperfections because that's the way in which we relate. And so when the speaker of your book, you becomes a mom of growing girls and is irritated at times and finds things coming out of her mouth which maybe are like what came out of her father's irritation. Um, so they're just verbal, but you feel so bad about it. And I remembered raising my daughter and son. I remember this. I remember being human. The little girl in it says, "It's okay, Mom. I know," because Mom says, "I'm sorry. It's okay, Mom." The wisdom of kids. It's so sweet. So there's so much in here in terms of emotion. And what I learned years ago as an early childhood educator, before getting my master's in creative writing, I learned this from a person I never met. Her name was Etta LaShan. She was an early childhood professor in Eastern Washington. And she wrote, "We have to know that children are more like us, most alike us in their feelings, and least alike in their thinking." And I feel
Mm,
like that's magic for writers to remember. I happen to have grown up in the suburbs of New Jersey. I happen to grow up around the same time as you, with a father around the age of your dad. And there
mhm,
are so many similarities, but it doesn't matter. I could have grown up anywhere, like on an Air Force base somewhere overseas, and I would still relate to the feelings and they in your book, and they would still bring all of these things up for me and make me feel in the end a sense of forgiveness, coming mostly through being able to be who I am now and raise my children the way I wanted to be raised. Um, so hopefully that worked. I think it did. But all of that happens reading this book. And the word peril is such a amazing word in here.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and in a way, we're always, even though this may be politically incorrect, we're always girls. We were born girls.
mhm,
We were treated as girls. We imbibed all this stuff as girls. Now we have girls, some of us. There are perils. They're always there. And yet, right? And I leave the book feeling, and yet, there's a
mhm.
celebration of life. There's a celebration of continuation. And so I want to thank you for this book. And
Thank you.
also, I want to thank you for sharing the inside of this book for you. So I've kind of summed up what I got from the book. And do you have any additional hopes for the readers of this memoir?
I would just love to continue, hearing from other readers. I love just today I received a message from somebody who read the book. She said, I read it in 2 days. I can't stop thinking about it. So I just love um, some of the ways that people
Yeah.
are sharing their reading experiences with me. And as somebody who's just published her first memoir, it's not my first book, but it's my first memoir. I would love it if the book does move you to share it with somebody else or reach out to me. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
happy to meet with book groups. I'd love for this conversation to continue.
Thank you. So when I do post this Zoom in my Substack, I will have an introduction that tells people how to find the book, and also they can comment on our discussion. which would be
Good.
really nice. And in addition, how would they contact you?
They can reach me through my website, melissafraterrigo.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your day with us.
Absolutely.
Um,
Thank you, Sheila.
yes, and I am eager for your next book.
I appreciate it so much. You have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.